That particular Saturday morning, as I stepped onto the acreage property, the sight of Sasha sobbing in the kitchen confirmed I'd committed the gravest error of my existence. She positioned herself before the basin, fingers immersed in sudsy water, posture sagging as though she bore the planet's entire burden. Her locks, typically maintained with such precision, hung in an untidy ponytail. The shadowed crescents beneath her eyes appeared so pronounced it seemed she'd been deprived of rest for countless nights, and her tears fell without sound, the manner in which women weep when exhaustion steals even their ability to vocalize pain. In the connected open-concept living area behind her, no fewer than 8 individuals occupied the space. Omar's mother, Denise, sat among them, that woman who'd regarded me since our first encounter, as though I represented nothing more than an inconvenience blocking her path. His pair of sisters, Taylor and Morgan, filled the air with their piercing voices and mockery-laden laughter. The youngest sibling, Derek, accompanied by his spouse and their pair of youngsters, allowed them to run unchecked throughout the residence, completely unrestrained. The entire group sprawled across the furniture as if ownership belonged to them, making demands for coffee, requesting additional toast, complaining loudly about the depleted jelly supply. My daughter, my Sasha, performed service duties. She functioned as though hired staff within her very own residence. "Sasha, where have you put the sugar?" one sister called out sharply, without even a glance in her direction. "Sasha, these eggs have gone cold." "Prepare fresh ones for me," Omar's mother, Denise, commanded, employing a tone that permitted no disagreement. My daughter drifted back and forth like an apparition, complying with each demand, wiping down each dish, enduring each disrespectful remark. Standing there in the doorway, I sensed fury beginning to rise from deep within my 70-year-old core. This scenario hadn't been part of my plan. This outcome wasn't what motivated me to purchase this residence. Precisely 18 months had passed since Sasha departed her initial marriage, 18 years spent with a man who'd abused her through every method possible without ever raising a hand. He'd ignored her presence for weeks at a stretch. He'd declared her worthless, good for absolutely nothing, responsible for ruining his existence. When she finally summoned the courage to request divorce, he claimed everything: the jointly purchased house, the accumulated savings, even the vehicle I'd presented to her on her 30th birthday. Sasha appeared at my doorstep, carrying 2 suitcases and a fractured spirit. Throughout the following months, I observed her moving through my living space like someone in a trance, uncertain about her life's direction, unsure how to restart her existence at 43. Nightly tears fell as she believed her opportunity for happiness, for family, for claiming her rightful place in this world had vanished. As her mother, as a woman who'd battled through her own struggles, I resolved to take action. My savings totaled $5,000, funds I'd accumulated across 30 years working as a bookkeeper. Money I'd tucked away for retirement, for my final years, ensuring I'd burden nobody. Yet observing my daughter in that condition, I recognized this money served a more significant purpose. I discovered this modest acreage on the city's outskirts. The size wasn't massive, yet beauty characterized it. 5 acres featuring fruit-bearing trees, a 3-bedroom dwelling, and an expansive kitchen with garden view windows. The $52,000 price tag required me to secure a $7,000 bank loan. But concern didn't touch me. Witnessing Sasha's expression the day I handed over those keys confirmed my decision's correctness. "This belongs to me, Mom?" she questioned, eyes flooding with tears. "It's genuinely mine?" "Yours exclusively," I assured her, embracing her tightly. "A location where you can begin anew, where nobody will ever diminish your worth." We wept together that day. Tears of joy, of hope, of that sensation that circumstances were finally improving. I envisioned Sasha residing there peacefully, cultivating her garden, perhaps launching a small baking enterprise as she'd always desired. I imagined her in tranquility. This situation never entered my imagination. I never pictured that half a year later she'd encounter Omar at a grocery store, that he'd initially demonstrate such charm, such attentiveness, such difference from her ex-husband. I never imagined their marriage would occur so rapidly, barely 4 months post-meeting. And I certainly never imagined he'd bring this family along. a family that had now transformed my daughter's sanctuary into their personal vacation resort. "Vivian, what an unexpected visit," Denise remarked when she finally registered my presence at the kitchen entrance. Her voice carried sweetness, yet her eyes projected Arctic coldness. "We had no knowledge you'd be arriving today." "It's my daughter's property," I stated calmly, though internal heat consumed me. "I may arrive whenever I choose." She smiled, though kindness didn't characterize the expression. It was the smile of someone believing they've already claimed victory, possessing complete control. "Of course, naturally," she responded, rising from the couch and approaching me with the confidence of someone feeling they command the premises. "Although technically it now belongs to your daughter and my son together. They're married after all. What one possesses, the other possesses equally." My skin prickled. This woman understood precisely what she was doing. She knew exactly which emotional triggers to manipulate. "Sasha," I called, maintaining my gaze fixed on Denise, the viper masquerading as a respectable woman. "Come here, please." My daughter lifted her eyes from the basin. Her eyes appeared red and swollen. She regarded me with a blend of relief and fear, as though my presence might rescue her while simultaneously worsening circumstances. "I'm occupied, Mom," she said, her voice fracturing. "I must finish cleaning the breakfast aftermath." "Let somebody else handle the cleaning," I stated firmly. "Come here immediately," Denise laughed directly in my face as though I delivered the world's most amusing joke. "Oh, Vivian, don't be so theatrical. Sasha is simply assisting with household chores. We're family, correct?" "Families assist one another." I surveyed the room. Omar's two sisters draped themselves over the sofa, watching television with their feet elevated on my daughter's coffee table. The brother stood outside in the backyard, smoking without any concern. The kids had scattered a trail of toys and food across the floor, and not a single person lifted a finger to help. "How long has your entire group been residing here?" I inquired. 2 weeks, Denise replied, as though it represented the most ordinary circumstance imaginable, "and will remain throughout the summer." Omar extended the invitation. He mentioned there's abundant room, and what purpose does a home serve if you won't share it with family? 2 weeks. My daughter had endured this nightmare for 14 days without uttering a single word to me. "And where is Omar currently?" I asked, attempting to maintain my composure. Though with each passing second, the pressure in my chest intensified. "He departed with his father to examine some land," Denise replied, settling back onto the sofa as though it were her personal throne. "They'll return for the midday meal. Speaking of which, Sasha, it's approaching 11 o'clock. You should commence preparing something. You understand, my son?" "Dislikes eating late." Sasha nodded silently and began extracting pots from the cabinet with mechanical movements, like a robot programmed for obedience, observing. My daughter in this state shattered my heart. This wasn't the woman I'd raised. This wasn't the resilient woman who'd survived an abusive marriage and discovered the courage to restart her life. I approached her and gently touched her arm. She flinched as though my touch had scorched her. Then I observed something that chilled my blood. She had red marks on her wrists, as if she'd been scrubbing dishes and floors for hours without interruption. Her hands appeared cracked and swollen. Her nails, which she always maintained perfectly, were broken and dirty. "Sasha, I need to speak with you," I said in a lowered voice. "Privately. Why don't you sit down with us for a while, Vivian?" interrupted Taylor, the younger sister. "We're watching a genuinely good soap opera. Sasha, can you bring your mom some coffee?" "I didn't come to watch television," I replied, not even glancing at her. "I came to speak with my daughter." What an attitude," Morgan muttered loudly enough for me to hear. "Now we see where Sasha gets that characteristic from." I turned to face her directly. She was a woman in her mid-30s with bleached blonde hair and nails so lengthy I wondered how she accomplished anything with them. She was consuming grapes from a bowl, spitting the seeds directly onto my daughter's wooden coffee table. "What attitude?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. She shrugged, still focused on the TV. Nothing. I'm merely suggesting that sometimes Sasha gets a little oversensitive, as though performing a few chores represents the world's end." I took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3 times. I had promised myself years ago that I would never lose control before people who weren't worth the energy, that I would never grant them the satisfaction of witnessing me explode. Yet these people were testing every ounce of patience I possessed. "Sasha, let's go outside," I said, taking my daughter's arm firmly yet gently. "But the midday meal," she began protesting. "The meal can wait." I led her from the kitchen before anyone else could object. We walked toward the backyard, distant from the eyes and ears of that parasitic family. Sasha walked with her head down, dragging her feet as if each one weighed 100 pounds. When we reached the old swing set I'd installed the week following the property purchase, I made her sit. I knelt before her, ignoring the pain in my 70-year-old knees, and took her destroyed hands in mine. "Tell me," I said simply. "Tell me everything." And then, as though someone had opened a floodgate, Sasha began to weep, not the silent crying I'd witnessed in the kitchen, but a deep, gut-wrenching sob. The crying of someone who'd been containing everything for far too long. "I don't understand how it happened, Mom," she choked out. "Everything was progressing so well. Omar was so kind to me, so different. He made me feel special, significant. He never mentioned his family was like this. He never told me his mother was so controlling, so demanding, so abusive." She nodded as tears continued falling. "When we married, they only came to visit occasionally. A Sunday here, a Saturday there. Denise always made comments, but Omar said that was just her manner, that she didn't mean anything by it. I tried to get along with her, Mom. I genuinely did." "I know, baby, I know." But 3 weeks ago, Denise called Omar, saying she needed a favor, that her landlord had raised the rent on her apartment and she needed a place to stay while she found something cheaper. Omar asked me if she could come for a few days. I didn't want to, but how could I refuse? It's his mother. I felt the anger surge inside me, but I remained silent, letting her speak. "She arrived with 2 suitcases," Sasha continued. "She said it would only be a week, but on the 3rd day, Taylor showed up with her things, saying she'd fought with her boyfriend and needed a place to stay. Then Morgan arrived saying her apartment was being remodeled. Then Derek with his wife and kids saying they wanted to spend a few days in the country." "And Omar didn't say anything?" I confirmed. Sasha shook her head. "He says yes to everything. If his mother asks for something, he can't refuse. He says we owe them hospitality because they're family, that this house is big enough for everyone, that I'm overreacting when I complain." "Overreacting?" I repeated, feeling the temperature of my blood rise. "Overreacting when they're treating you like a servant in your own home?" "Denise says it's my obligation as the wife to take care of the family," Sasha said. "That this is how things are done in their family. That a good wife always puts others' needs first." Sasha wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and I thought maybe she was right. Maybe I'm the one being selfish. Maybe this is how normal families function, and I just don't know because I only grew up with you. Those words hit me like a slap across the face. My daughter was doubting herself, her worth, her right to be treated with respect in her own home, all because a manipulative woman had found a way to infiltrate her thoughts. "Sasha, look at me," I said, cupping her face in my hands. "Look me in the eyes." She slowly lifted her gaze. Her brown eyes, so much like mine, were filled with pain and confusion. "None of this is normal," I said firmly. "None of this is right. A family does not use you. A family does not exploit you. A family does not make you feel like a stranger in your own house." "But Omar says—" "I don't care what Omar says," I interrupted her. "This house is not Omar's. This house is yours. I put it in your name. Remember, only your name is on the deed. I made sure of that specifically so no one could ever take it from you. When I bought the acreage, I was very clear with Attorney Miller. I told him I wanted everything only in Sasha's name. Not even I appeared as a co-owner. I had learned from my own marriage 40 years ago that a woman needs to have something. That is completely hers. Something no one can touch. Something that gives her security and power. But we're married, Sasha said, her voice small. What's mine is his. No, I said firmly. This house is private property that you acquired before the marriage. Legally, it is only yours, and that means you decide who stays and who leaves. I saw something change in my daughter's eyes, a small spark of hope, perhaps, or maybe rebellion. I can't kick them out, Mom, she whispered. Omar would never forgive me. And is he forgiving you for being miserable? Is he forgiving you for crying in your own kitchen? Is he defending you from his family? Silence, a silence that spoke volumes. Where are you sleeping, Sasha? I asked suddenly, a question that had just crossed my mind. She lowered her gaze. On the small sofa in the living room. And your room? Denise said she needed a comfortable bed for her back. And since the master... Bedroom has the newest mattress. I couldn't listen anymore. I stood up from the ground with a determination I hadn't felt in years. Get up, I told Sasha, extending my hand. She looked at me, confused, quickly wiping the last tears from her cheeks. What are you going to do, Mom? I'm going to remind those people whose house this is. I walked back toward the kitchen with Sasha following my steps. I could feel her trembling behind me, probably terrified of what might happen. But I had made my decision. I had seen enough, heard enough, and I was not going to allow anyone, absolutely anyone, to treat my daughter this way. When we entered, the scene was exactly as I had left it. Denise on the couch like a queen, the sisters lounging and watching TV, the kids running and shouting unsupervised. The mess was worse than before. Juice was spilled on the floor, crumbs were everywhere. Dirty dishes were piled up on every available surface. Sasha, you're back, Denise said, not even looking at her. Perfect. I need you to make me a cup of chamomile tea and make sure it's piping hot this time. The one this morning was lukewarm. I planted myself in front of the television, completely blocking the screen. All eyes turned to me. Excuse me, Taylor said with that spoiled teenager tone. We're watching that. Not anymore, I replied, my voice calm but firm. I searched for the remote control, which was lying between the sofa cushions, and turned off the TV. What do you think you're doing? Denise rose, her face transforming into a mask of indignation. You can't just come in here and I can and I am, I interrupted her. This is my daughter's house, and I think it's time we had a conversation about rules. Denise chuckled, but it was a humorless, scornful laugh. Rules, Vivian? I think you don't understand how things work. My son is married to your daughter. That makes us family, and family doesn't need rules to visit. Visit? I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air. That's an interesting word. A visit lasts one day, maybe two, perhaps a weekend if you get along very well. But you've been here for 2 weeks. That's not a visit. That's an invasion. Taylor got up from the sofa, crossing her arms. Look, lady, I don't know what Sasha told you, but we are not an invasion. Omar invited us. It's his house as much as hers. No, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. It's not. This house is solely in Sasha's name. Omar has no legal right to this property, so technically he can't even invite anyone without her permission. I watched their expressions change. Confusion, surprise, and then something that looked like fear in Denise's eyes. That can't be true, she said slowly. Omar told us the house belonged to both of them. Omar either lied to you or simply assumed something that isn't true. I turned to Sasha, who was standing at the kitchen entrance with wide eyes. Sasha, tell your mother-in-law whose house this is. She swallowed, looking between her mother-in-law and me. I could see the internal battle on her face, the fear of confronting the woman who had dominated her for weeks. But then something shifted. I watched her shoulders straighten a little, her chin lift barely an inch. It's mine, she said, her voice shaky but audible. My mother bought it for me before I met Omar. It's only in my name." The silence that followed was dense, heavy. Denise looked at both of us as if she were recalculating the entire situation. I could see the gears turning in her head, searching for a new strategy, a new way to manipulate things to her advantage. "Well," she finally said with a forced smile, "that doesn't change anything, does it? Sasha wants us here. She's so sweet, so generous, not like some other daughters-in-law I've known who are selfish and petty. She understands the value of family. She was using the oldest weapon in the East book, guilt, making it seem like any objection from Sasha meant she was a bad person, a bad wife, a bad daughter-in-law. "Sasha," I said, keeping my eyes fixed on Denise, "do you want these people here?" There was a long pause. All eyes were on my daughter. I could see her struggling with the answer, how years of conditioning from her first marriage told her she had to be nice, that she had to please everyone, that saying what she really thought would make her a horrible person. Sasha began, her voice weak. "The truth, baby," I said softly. "Only the truth." She took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was stronger. "No, I do not want them here." Denise gasped as if she had been slapped. Taylor and Morgan looked at each other with expressions of shock. Even the children stopped running for a moment. "You cannot be serious," Denise said. "After everything we've done for you, after accepting you into our family, after my son saved you from being a divorced, lonely woman." And there was the true face of this woman, not the sweet, manipulative tone, but pure venom. "Saved?" I repeated, the anger finally finding its voice. "Your son didn't save anyone. Sasha didn't need saving. She had her own house, her own life. If anyone benefited from this marriage, it was him. How dare you?" Denise took a step toward me, her eyes burning. "My son is a good man. He works hard. He pays the bills for this house." "What bills?" I asked. "The electricity, the water? Because I imagine with 8 people living here, those bills must be pretty high lately." She opened her mouth to reply, but closed it quickly. I had hit a nerve. "Sasha," I said, turning to my daughter, "who has been paying the utilities since they arrived?" She looked down. "I have. Omar says his money is tight this month because he's saving for a project." "And the food?" "This house was full of food when I left 3 weeks ago. Now I see the pantry is almost empty." "I did the grocery shopping," Sasha admitted. 3 times this week. Nearly $800 in total, $800. My daughter had spent $800 feeding this family of freeloaders in 2 weeks. "And have they contributed anything?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Sasha shook her head. I turned back to Denise with a cold smile. "So let me see if I understand correctly. You all came here, moved into my daughter's home, have been eating her food, using her utilities, sleeping in her bed, and on top of that, you've turned her into your personal servant. And all this without paying a single dime." "We are family," Denise repeated, but her voice sounded less sure now. "Family doesn't charge each other." "You're right," I said, nodding slowly. "Family doesn't charge, but family also doesn't exploit. Family doesn't humiliate. Family doesn't turn your home into your prison." "This is ridiculous," Morgan intervened, standing up from the sofa. "Mom, you don't have to listen to this. When Omar gets here, he'll put these 2 in their place." "Omar won't do anything," I said with a certainty that surprised even Sasha. "Because by the time Omar gets here, you won't be here anymore." The room went completely silent. Even the children had gone still, sensing the tension in the air. "What did you say?" Denise asked slowly, dangerously. "What you heard," I replied. "It is time for all of you to pack your bags and leave." Denise looked at me as if I had lost my mind. Then she let out a dry, humorless laugh full of contempt. "You can't kick us out," she said, crossing her arms. "This is not your house, Vivian. It belongs to your daughter and my son, and as far as I know, my son has just as much right to be here as anyone. Your son can stay if Sasha decides he can," I replied. "But you are not welcome." "And who is going to kick us out?" Taylor asked with a sneer. "You, a 70-year-old woman? Please." I walked up to her slowly, looking her directly in the eyes. She was taller than me, younger. She probably thought that gave her some kind of advantage. But I had lived 70 years in this world. I had raised a daughter alone after my husband died when Sasha was only 5. I had worked in offices full of men who thought they could intimidate me. I had survived loss, betrayal, and pain that this spoiled girl couldn't even imagine. "Be careful about underestimating older women," I said in a low but firm voice. "We've survived too much to be afraid of people like you." Taylor took a step back, her smirk faltering. "Sasha," Denise said, ignoring me completely and turning to my daughter. "You're not going to allow this, are you? You're not going to let your mother come in here and cause problems in your marriage. Think about Omar. Think about how he'll feel when he finds out you kicked out his family." And there was the manipulation again, the emotional blackmail, the way to make Sasha doubt herself, to make her feel guilty for wanting peace in her own house. I watched Sasha open her mouth, probably to give in, to apologize, to say everything was fine. But before she could speak, I intervened. "Omar can feel however he wants," I said. "But he will have to understand that his wife deserves respect in her own home. And if he can't understand that, then maybe he needs to ask himself what kind of man he is." "You are trying to destroy their marriage," Denise accused, her voice rising in volume. "That's what you're doing, isn't it? You never liked that your daughter found someone. You always wanted to keep her dependent on you." The accusation was so absurd, it almost made me laugh. I, who had spent my life savings to give my daughter independence. I, who had worked double shifts for years to make sure she never went without anything. I, who had prayed every night for her to find someone who would truly make her happy. "I won't dignify that with a response," I said simply. "You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave this property." "1 hour?" Morgan yelled. "Are you crazy? We have suitcases, boxes. The kids have toys all over the house." "Then I suggest you start now, instead of continuing to argue." Derek, who had been quiet all this time smoking outside, finally walked in. He was a stocky man in his 40s with a beer gut and a perpetually bored expression. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking between his mother and me. "This woman is kicking us out," said his wife, a thin woman with a shrill voice who hadn't spoken until now. "Can you believe it? She's kicking us out." Derek looked me up and down, evaluating me. I could see the contempt in his eyes, the way he assumed he could intimidate me just because he was a man, just because he was physically bigger. "Ma'am," he said, his voice trying to sound threatening. "I think you're a little confused. This is my brother's house, and we are my brother's guests. So you have no authority to tell us anything." I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket. A simple gesture, but one that made everyone tense up. "What are you going to do?" Denise asked suspiciously. "Call the police?" "Don't be ridiculous. They won't do anything. We haven't committed any crime." "I'm not going to call the police," I said, dialing a number I knew by heart. "I'm going to call my lawyer." I watched their expressions change. "Lawyer, that word has power. It has weight. It means legal consequences, documents, official things that can't be ignored or manipulated with sweet words." The phone rang twice before he answered. "Vivian." What a surprise. "How are you?" "Hello, Attorney Miller," I said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "I need you to clarify something about the deed to the acreage we bought for Sasha last year. The house is solely in her name, correct? Her husband has no ownership rights, correct? It is private property acquired before the marriage. It is completely in her name." "Why, yes. Is there a problem?" "There are people on the property who refuse to leave when asked to do so." "Can my daughter legally demand that they vacate?" "Absolutely. It is her private property. If she asks someone to leave and that person refuses, that constitutes trespassing. She can call the police and they will have to escort them off." I looked at Denise as she listened to every word coming from the phone. Her face had gone pale. "And if they are relatives of her husband?" I asked. "It doesn't matter. The law is clear. Private property means the owner decides who can be there and who can't. The fact that they are related to the husband gives them no legal rights whatsoever." "Perfect. Thank you very much, Attorney Miller. I'll call you if I need anything else." I hung up the phone and put it in my pocket. The silence in the room was absolute. "Did you hear that?" I asked, looking at each of them. "If you are not off this property in 1 hour, Sasha is going to call the police. And believe me, you do not want that to happen. Police officers are not kind when they have to remove people who are trespassing. This is unbelievable, Denise muttered. Absolutely unbelievable. Wait until Omar hears about this. Wait until he knows his own wife kicked his family to the curb. Omar is free to have his opinion, I said. But this is the reality. His family has abused Sasha's hospitality. They have turned her home into their personal hotel. They have spent her money, occupied her space, and treated her like a servant. And now that is over. We didn't do any of that, Morgan yelled. Sasha is overreacting as always. She's so dramatic. Dramatic? I repeated, feeling the temperature of my voice drop dangerously. My daughter has destroyed hands from cleaning and cooking for you. She hasn't slept in her own bed in 2 weeks because your mother appropriated it. She spent $800 on food that you all devoured without contributing a cent. And you call her dramatic? Morgan opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out, because she knew it was true. They all knew it. Mom, Sasha said, her voice shaky from her position at the kitchen entrance. What's going to happen when Omar gets here? It was the question that had been floating in the air all this time. Omar, the husband, Denise's son, the man trapped in the middle of all this. That depends on him, I replied honestly. He can get angry. He can try to defend his family, or he can see this for what it really is, a necessary intervention to protect his marriage and his wife's mental health. He will take our side, Denise said with certainty. My son knows his place. He knows family comes first. His family is Sasha now, I said, looking at her directly. When he married her, she became his priority, not you. That's what you think, Denise spat. But a son is always a son. Blood is thicker than any marriage certificate. And there was the real truth. This woman's deep belief that her son would always belong to her, that no wife could ever be more important than his mother. It was a battle Sasha could never win, not as long as Omar remained tied to Denise's manipulations. You have 50 minutes, I said, looking at my watch. I suggest you stop talking and start packing. For a moment, no one moved. They all stood there looking at me as if they expected me to back down, to say it was just a joke, that of course they could stay. But I didn't move. I stood there planted firmly with my arms crossed and an expression that made it clear I would not change my mind. Finally, it was Derek who spoke. This is stupid. I'm going to call Omar. He pulled out his phone and dialed. We all waited in silence as the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. He's not answering, he muttered, putting the phone away in frustration. Then I suggest you start packing and explain the situation when he finally answers, I said without compassion. Denise glared at me. If looks could kill, I'd be dead on the floor. But I had faced worse looks. I had faced bosses who yelled at me, doctors who gave me bad news, bank officials who told me I didn't qualify for loans. An angry glare from a manipulative woman was not going to make me back down. Fine, she finally said, her voice icy. We're leaving. But this is not going to stand. Omar will know exactly what happened here, today. She turned to my daughter with an expression of deep disappointment. I hope you're ready for the consequences of blaming your husband and defending your mother instead of your marriage. It was her last arrow, her final attempt to plant seeds of doubt and guilt in Sasha's heart. And for a second, I saw it work. I saw my daughter's eyes fill with fear, her shoulders hunch. Sasha is not blaming anyone, I intervened before Denise could do more damage. She is defending her right to live in peace in her own house. If Omar has a problem with that, then the problem is his, not hers. Denise let out a scornful sound and headed toward the master bedroom, the one she had occupied as if it were her own. Taylor and Morgan followed her, mumbling loud enough for us to hear words like ungrateful and terrible. Derek stayed for a moment longer, looking at me with something that seemed between respect and resentment. You know you're going to cause a family war, right? If defending my daughter causes a war, I replied calmly, then so be it. He shook his head and went out to the yard to gather his children's things. His wife followed him, shooting me venomous glances as she picked up toys from the floor. When we were finally alone in the living room, Sasha collapsed onto the sofa, her body trembling. I sat down next to her and held her tight, just like when she was a little girl and had nightmares. Did I do the right thing, Mom? She asked, her voice broken. Or did I just destroy my marriage? My love, I said, stroking her hair, a marriage that can only survive if you agree to be mistreated is not a marriage worth saving. But I love Omar. I know. And maybe he loves you too. But love is not enough if it's not accompanied by respect. And his family doesn't respect you. And worse yet, he hasn't defended you from them. We stayed like that for several minutes, listening to the sound of suitcases being dragged, drawers opening and closing, voices arguing in distant rooms, the sound of an invasion finally being dismantled. I'm scared, Sasha admitted. I'm scared Omar will leave me, that I'll be alone again, that I failed at another marriage. Listen to me carefully, I said, taking her face in my hands so she would look me in the eyes. If Omar leaves you because you didn't allow his family to mistreat you, then he did you a favor. Because it would mean he was never the man you thought he was. And you deserve better than that. But I'm 43, Mom. Who will want me at this age? I already failed once. You didn't fail at anything, I interrupted her firmly. Your first husband was an abuser. That wasn't your fault. And if this marriage doesn't work out, it won't be your fault either. The fault lies with the men who don't know how to value the extraordinary women they have by their side. She leaned into my shoulder and cried, not the silent crying from the kitchen, nor the hysterical crying in the garden. This was a cry of relief, of release, of years of holding it in silence because she had to be strong, because she had to keep the peace, because she had to be the good wife, the good daughter-in-law, the good woman. A half hour later, we heard the sound of vehicles arriving. My heart sped up a little. Omar had arrived. Sasha immediately tensed up next to me, quickly wiping her tears. It's okay, I said, squeezing her hand. I'm here. You're not alone. The door opened and Omar walked in, a man of medium height with hair starting to gray at the temples. Behind him came his father, an older, quiet man who rarely said anything at family gatherings. What is going on here? Omar asked, looking at the suitcases piled up in the living room. Why are they packing? Are they going on vacation or something? Denise stormed out of the bedroom like a hurricane, her face red with fury. Omar, thank goodness you're here. Your mother-in-law has gone crazy. She's kicking us out of the house. Omar looked at me, confused. Then he looked at Sasha. What? What is she talking about? Omar, Sasha began in a trembling voice, but I stood up and spoke for her. I asked your family to leave this property because they have been abusing Sasha's hospitality for 2 weeks. Abusing? Omar repeated as if the word made no sense. They are my family. I told them they could stay as long as they needed. This is not your house to make those invitations, I said calmly but firmly. What do you mean it's not my house? His voice rose in volume. I'm Sasha's husband. I live here. Of course it's my house. Living in a house doesn't legally make it yours, I explained. This property is solely in Sasha's name. It's private property that she acquired before marrying you. You have no ownership rights over this acreage. I watched his face change as he processed this information, which he clearly didn't know or had chosen to ignore. That doesn't matter. We're married. What's hers is mine. Not in this case, I said, shaking my head. And even if it were legally shared, which it is not, you still wouldn't have the right to invite people who mistreat your wife in her own home. Mistreat? Omar turned to his mother. What is she saying? Did you mistreat them? Denise put on her best innocent victim face. Of course not, son. We have been nothing but kind to Sasha. She's overreacting as always. You know how she is. How I am? Sasha asked, standing up from the sofa, her voice stronger now. How am I, Omar? Tell me. He remained silent, clearly uncomfortable being trapped between his mother and his wife. Am I overreacting when I cry because your mother sleeps in our bed and I sleep on the sofa? Sasha continued, her voice trembling but firm. Am I overreacting when I spend all my money feeding your family while you save up for a project? Am I overreacting when I get up at 5 in the morning to prepare breakfast for 8 people and go to bed at 11 at night after cleaning up everyone's messes? Sasha, you're being dramatic, Omar said, but his voice sounded less convinced. No, Sasha said, taking a step toward him. I'm not dramatic. I'm exhausted. I'm hurt, and I'm tired of you ignoring me when I tell you your family is hurting me. Omar opened his mouth to reply, but found no words. I watched him look at his mother, then at Sasha, then at me. He was looking for a way out, a way to resolve this without having to take sides. But that option no longer existed. "Omar," Denise said with a soft, manipulative voice, "your wife is letting her mother come here to destroy our family. Are you going to allow that? Are you going to let a stranger separate us?" "I am not a stranger," I said with an icy voice. "I am the woman who bought this house for her daughter, the woman who is protecting her daughter from abuse. And if you see that as a negative thing, then the problem is you." "No one is abusing anyone," Denise insisted. "We are family. Families live together, help each other, share space." "And what have you shared?" Sasha asked, her voice now louder, more confident. "What have you contributed to this house besides more work for me?" Silence. No one answered because there was no answer. "I'm asking you," Sasha continued, looking at each member of the Hayes family. "How much money have you put toward the food, the electricity, the water you waste in your 40-minute showers, the gas you use when you leave the stove on all morning?" "I didn't know you were keeping track," Morgan murmured with sarcasm. "I'm not keeping track," Sasha replied. "But when you spend $800 in 2 weeks on food for people who don't even say thank you, you start to notice." Omar paled. $800? "Yes, Omar. $800 of my money because you said your money was tight this month. But it turns out you're not too tight. To go out with your father to look at land, which probably meant going out for breakfast. And a beer while I cooked for your family." I saw something crack in Omar's expression, a small fissure. In his facade that everything was fine. "Sasha, I didn't know you felt this way," he said. His voice softer. "I told you," she replied. And now there were tears in her eyes, but there was also fire. "I told you 3 times. The first time you told me not to overreact. The second time you told me your mother was just trying to help. The third time you got angry with me and told me I was the one with the problem, not your family." "Son," Denise interrupted, "don't let her manipulate you. She's using tears to make you feel guilty. Stop it." Omar suddenly yelled, surprising everyone. "Stop it, Mom!" Denise recoiled as if she had been hit. She was clearly not used to her son talking to her like that. "Did you know Sasha hasn't slept in our bed since you arrived?" Omar asked his mother, his voice trembling with contained emotion. "Did you know she's been sleeping on the sofa? Did you even care to ask if she was comfortable?" I have back problems," Denise stammered. "I need a firm mattress. I thought Sasha would understand." "And why didn't you sleep in one of the guest rooms?" Omar asked. "Why did you have to take our bedroom?" Denise had no answer for that, because the truth was obvious. She had taken the master bedroom because she could, because no one had stopped her, because she wanted to establish dominance over the territory. Omar ran his hands over his face, breathing deeply. When he spoke again, his voice sounded tired, defeated. "Mom, I think you should go." "What?" Denise looked at him as if he had just betrayed her in the worst way possible. "Omar, you can't be serious. I'm your mother. I know, and I love you. But Sasha is right. You've taken advantage of her kindness. And I allowed it because I didn't want to see what was happening. Omar, please." Denise's voice was now pure pleading. "Don't do this. Don't make me feel like I'm a bad person. I just wanted to spend time with my family." "You could spend time with us without moving in," Omar said firmly. "You could visit on weekends. We could go out to eat together. But this," he pointed to the suitcases, the mess, the tension in the air. "This is not a visit. This is an invasion." The words I had said earlier were now coming out of her own son's mouth, and they hurt more coming from him. Taylor stepped forward, her face red with anger. "I can't believe you're kicking us out for this woman, your own family." "Omar, the people who were there when you were born, when you grew up, when you needed us. And I'm grateful for that," Omar said, looking at her. "But Sasha is my wife. She's my family now too. And you've treated her like an employee in her own house. How did you expect me to react when I finally opened my eyes?" "You didn't open your eyes," Morgan spat. "They brainwashed you. That old lady," she pointed at me with contempt, "came here to cause problems because she can't stand her daughter having a life of her own." I took a step toward her. "Watch what you say, girl. I came here because I found my daughter crying in her own kitchen, exhausted, humiliated, treated worse than a dog. And if that sounds like causing trouble to you, then you have no idea what family means." "Vivian is right. A voice we hadn't expected to hear said. Omar's father, who had been quiet all this time, finally spoke. Denise, what we did is wrong. I knew it from the start, but I didn't say anything because I never say anything. But this time, I can't stay quiet. Denise turned to her husband with an expression of shock. You too? My own husband is going to side against me. I'm not against you, he said in a tired voice. I'm against what we did. We took advantage of Sasha's kindness. I watched her work like a slave these past few days and did nothing to stop it. And I'm ashamed of that. There was a moment of absolute silence. Denise looked at her husband as if she didn't recognize him. Her children looked at her, expecting her to say something, to defend them, to somehow shift the blame onto everyone else. But for the first time, Denise was speechless. Her arsenal of manipulation, her guilt tactics, her victim strategies, all had failed. She was being confronted not just by strangers, but by her own son and her own husband. Finish packing, Omar finally said. His voice was firm despite the visible pain in his eyes. You can stay in my old apartment. I still have the keys. It's downtown. It has 2 bedrooms. It's not big, but it's enough until you find another place. I'm not going anywhere, Denise said, straightening her back, trying to regain some dignity. If we leave, you come with us, Omar. That is the only option. I looked at Omar, waiting. This was the moment of truth, the moment he would really have to choose between his mother's manipulation and respect for his wife. Omar looked at his mother, then at Sasha, who was standing next to me with tears streaming down her cheeks, but with her head held high. I could see the internal battle on his face, years of conditioning versus what he knew was right. No, Mom, he finally said. I'm staying here with my wife, in her house, where I should have been all this time, defending her instead of allowing her to be treated like this. Denise gasped, as if she had been slapped. Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of powerlessness, of knowing she had lost the control she'd had over her son for 45 years. You'll regret this, she said in a trembling voice. When she disappoints you, when this marriage fails like her first marriage, you are going to regret choosing a stranger over your own blood. Sasha is not a stranger, Omar said, with a firmness I hadn't heard from him before. She is my wife, and if this marriage fails, it will be because I didn't protect her when I should have, not because she wasn't worth it. Denise looked at all of us with a mixture of pain and fury that seemed to consume her from within. For a moment, I thought she was going to continue arguing, that she would launch more accusations, more manipulations. But something in Omar's expression, in the firmness of his stance, made her realize that this battle was lost. Fine, she finally said, her voice icy. We're leaving, but don't expect me to ever speak to either of you again. Not to you, Omar, and certainly not to you, Sasha. You have chosen your path. Now you'll have to live with the consequences. She turned and marched toward the master bedroom to finish packing. Taylor and Morgan followed her, shooting us looks of pure hatred. Derek and his wife hurriedly gathered their children's things, muttering among themselves about ingratitude and disrespect. Omar's father stayed a moment longer. He walked over to Sasha and put a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, he said simply. I should have said something sooner. I should have defended you, Sasha nodded, unable to speak through the tears that were now falling freely. He nodded back and went out to help load the suitcases into the car. Omar collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I could see him trembling, processing everything that had just happened. He had defied his mother for the first time in his life, and even though he had done the right thing, it was clearly costing him every fiber of his being. I went to Sasha and hugged her. She clung to me as if I were her lifeline, sobbing into my shoulder. They weren't tears of sadness, not entirely. They were tears of relief, of liberation, of years of holding it in silence, finally coming to an end. The next 30 minutes were organized chaos, suitcases being dragged, boxes being loaded, children crying because they didn't want to leave. Denise moved through the house with the wounded dignity of a dethroned queen, collecting every little thing that belonged to her, as if each object were proof of the injustice she had suffered. At one point, Taylor tried to take a decorative lamp from the living room. That lamp stays here, I said firmly. I bought it, Taylor lied brazenly. No, I bought it, Sasha said, raising her voice for the first time. 8 months ago at that antique shop downtown. It cost $10 and I paid cash. I can show you the receipt if you want. Taylor released the lamp in a fury and stormed out of the house without another word. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, all the suitcases were in the cars. There were 2 vehicles parked outside, Denise's sedan and Derek's truck. The children were already buckled into their seats, still crying and asking why they had to leave. Denise came out of the house for the last time, carrying her handbag. She stopped at the threshold of the door, looking at all of us with an expression that tried to be contemptuous, but couldn't completely hide the pain. "Omar," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Last chance. Come with us. Don't let these women destroy our family." Omar, who was standing next to Sasha with his arm around her, shook his head slowly. "I've made my decision. Mom, my place is here." Denise pressed her lips into a thin line. "Then so be it. But when you realize your mistake, when you see that you chose wrong, don't come looking for me. This door closes today and it won't open again." "That is your choice," Omar said, his voice calm but firm. "I am only choosing my wife." "You are the one turning that into a war." Denise didn't answer. She simply turned around and walked to her car with her back straight and her head held high. Taylor and Morgan got into the car with her. Derek, his wife, and their children got into the truck. Omar's father was the last to get in, giving us one last apologetic look before closing the car door. The engines started. The cars began to move slowly down the gravel driveway toward the gate. Sasha, Omar, and I stood on the porch, watching them drive away. No one spoke. We just listened to the crunch of the tires on the gravel, the sound of the engines, and then the silence when they finally disappeared from view. Sasha was the first to move. She turned to Omar and hugged him tightly, sobbing against his chest. He hugged her back, his own tears finally falling. "I'm sorry," Omar whispered again and again. "I am so sorry, Sasha. I should have listened to you. I should have defended you from the beginning." "I'm sorry," she couldn't reply. She just cried and clung to him as if she were afraid he would leave too. I let them have their moment. I stood on the porch, looking out at the empty driveway, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel happy. I just felt tired, relieved, and hopeful that maybe, just maybe, this would mark a new beginning for my daughter. After several minutes, I walked over to them and placed my hand on Sasha's shoulder. "Are you two okay?" I asked softly. Sasha nodded, wiping her face. "Yes, Mom, I think so." Omar looked at me with red eyes. "Vivian, I don't know what to say. You were right about everything and I was a coward." "You weren't a coward," I said honestly. "You were caught between 2 loyalties. That's not easy for anyone. The important thing is that you finally made the right decision." "Do you think I did the right thing?" he asked uncertainly. "She's my mother, my family." "Your family is Sasha now," I said firmly. "And yes, you did the right thing. A mother who truly loves you would never put you in the position of having to choose between her and your happiness. She forced you to choose, not you." He nodded slowly, processing my words. "It's going to take time," he said, "to reconcile all this with what happened." "I know," I said. "And that's okay. Take all the time you need. But in the meantime, take care of your wife. She needs you now more than ever." "I will," he promised, looking at Sasha with a tenderness that gave me hope. "I promise you, Sasha, I will never let anyone treat you like that again. I will never ignore you when you tell me something is wrong." Sasha looked him in the eyes. "Really?" "Really," he said, taking her face in his hands. "You are the most important thing in my life, and I should have shown you that from the beginning." They kissed, a kiss full of apologies and promises. And I, feeling that my work here was done, began to walk toward my car. "You're leaving already, Mom?" Sasha asked, separating from Omar. "You two need time alone," I said. "To talk, to heal, to start over. But will you come tomorrow?" She asked in a small voice, still needing my presence, my support. "I'll come when you need me," I said, smiling. "But for now, this is your house, your space, your life. And you need to live it without your mom watching every step." She nodded, understanding, but I saw the shine of tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for defending me, for not letting me get lost." I'm never going to let you get lost, I said, hugging her one last time. That's what mothers do. We're there in the darkest moments, reminding our daughters who they truly are. I got into my car and started the engine. Before driving off, I rolled down the window and looked at them one last time. Omar, I said, catching his attention. Take good care of her. Because if I ever find her crying in that kitchen again, next time I won't just kick out your family. I'll kick you out too. I wasn't joking, and he knew it. He nodded solemnly. It won't happen again. You have my word. Good. I started the car and began driving down the gravel path. In the rearview mirror, I could see them standing together on the porch, embracing, watching me drive away. They looked small in the distance, fragile, but also united in a way they hadn't been before. I drove back to the city with my mind full of everything that had happened. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that was still rushing through my veins. I had faced Denise and her entire family. I had defended my daughter in a way I never thought I would have to do again. And though I felt exhausted, I also felt alive in a way I hadn't experienced in years. When I arrived at my apartment downtown, it was almost evening. The streetlights were beginning to turn on, and I could hear the familiar sound of traffic, the voices of neighbors, the urban life that had been my home for so long. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat down in my favorite armchair, the one I had bought 20 years ago, which knew every curve of my tired body. My phone rang. It was Sasha. Mom. Her voice sounded different, lighter, freer. You made it home safely? Yes, my love. I'm home having tea. Omar and I have been talking, she said. Really talking for the first time in weeks. He apologized for everything, for not listening to me, for not defending me, for letting his family treat me like that. And what did you tell him? I told him I forgave him, but that things had to change. That if we were going to stay together, I needed to know he would be on my side when it mattered. That I couldn't feel alone in my own marriage again. And what did he say? He cried, Mom, he really cried. He said he was ashamed of himself, of how he let things go so far. That he had been so programmed to obey his mother that he didn't realize he was betraying his wife in the process. I felt my chest ease a little. Maybe Omar really had learned something from all this. Maybe this marriage had a chance after all. I'm glad, my love. Truly. We're going to clean the house together, Sasha continued. The whole house? Change the sheets, wash everything they touched, reorganize the spaces. Omar says he wants the house to feel like ours again, not a reminder of what happened. That's a good idea, I said. Sometimes we need to physically clean a space to be able to heal emotionally. Mom. Her voice became softer, more vulnerable. Do you think I'm a bad person for kicking out Omar's family? No, I replied without hesitation. You are a woman who finally defended her right to live with dignity in her own house. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you strong. His mom said horrible things before she left. She said I had destroyed their family, that I was manipulative, that Omar was going to regret choosing me. Those are the words of a woman who lost control, I said firmly. They have nothing to do with you and everything to do with her. Denise is used to manipulating her son, to having power over him. When you and I confronted her, that power disappeared, and that terrifies her. Do you think she can forgive me someday? I mean, if his relationship with his mother is ruined because of this— Sasha, I interrupted her. Listen to me carefully. You didn't ruin anything. Denise ruined her own relationship with her son by putting him in an impossible position. A good mother wants to see her son happy, even if that means taking a step back. She didn't do that. She chose control over love. Those are the consequences of her own actions, not yours. I heard her breathe on the other end of the line, processing my words. Thank you, Mom, for coming today. For not leaving me alone. I'll never leave you alone, I promised. But now I need you to be strong, to stand firm on your boundaries. Because Denise will try to come back. She will call Omar. She will play the victim. She will try to manipulate him into feeling guilty. And when that happens, you two need to be united. We will be, Sasha said, with a determination that filled me with pride. Omar promised me he won't let his mother manipulate him again. He says he's going to set clear boundaries. They can see each other, but in neutral places and for short periods. Never living with us again. Never surprise invasions again. That sounds fair, I said. Omar has the right to have a relationship with his mother if he wants, but that relationship cannot come at the expense of your peace of mind. We talked for almost another hour. She told me how they had found things hidden all over the house, belongings of the Hayes family they had intentionally left behind to have an excuse to return. A scarf of Denise's in the closet, the children's toys under the sofa, Taylor's toothbrush still in the bathroom. I'm going to pack everything up and send it to them, Sasha said. I don't want anything of theirs here. When we finally hung up, I sat in my armchair for a long time looking out at the city lights. I thought about my own mother, who had died 30 years ago. I wondered if she would have been proud of what I did today, how I defended my daughter. I think she would. I think she would understand that sometimes love means being fierce. It means facing dragons. It means saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. The following days were quiet. Sasha called me every night to tell me how things were going. She and Omar were working on their marriage, really talking for the first time about expectations, boundaries, family. They were going to couples therapy, something Sasha had suggested and Omar had accepted without resistance. The therapist says Omar has what they call enmeshment with his mother. Sasha explained to me in one of our calls that he never developed healthy boundaries between her and him, which is why it's so hard for him to tell her no. And what does Omar say about that? He says it makes sense, that he always felt he had to please his mother to be a good son, that the idea of disappointing her terrified him more than anything else. At least he's recognizing it, I said. That's the first step. 1 week after the incident, Denise started calling. First she called Omar directly, but he didn't answer. Then she started sending him text messages, each one more manipulative than the last. Sasha read some of them to me. Your father has heart problems. Because of you. I can't sleep thinking about how my own son betrayed me. I hope you're happy, knowing you destroyed your mother. How is Omar responding? I asked. He's not responding, Sasha said with satisfaction. The therapist told him not to respond to the manipulation, to only reply when she could talk without trying to make him feel guilty. So far she hasn't been able to. Good, I said. Maintaining boundaries is the hardest part, especially at the beginning. But it gets easier with time. 2 weeks later, I received my own call from Denise. It was late at night, almost 10 o'clock. Vivian? Her voice sounded different, softer, more vulnerable. I need to talk to you. About what? I asked cautiously. About what happened. About my son. About everything. There was something in her tone that made me hesitate. She didn't sound like the furious, manipulative woman who had stormed out of that house 2 weeks ago.